Harvard Divinity School.
100 Years Rudolf Steiner, December 15th and 16th, 2025.
Okay. Our next speaker is one of the most devoted members of our Evolution of Spirituality community. Someone who brought anthroposophical wisdom to the first Evolution of Spirituality conference and has been with us ever since. Billy Choi-Gekas is an anthroposophical psychotherapist and graduate student at the University of Toronto, and they will speak on understanding racism through Rudolf Steiner's Psychosophy of the 7 life processes and fallen life processes. Billy.
Bonjour, Anine. Ejien. Hello, community. How are you? Truly, how are you all doing? It's been quite a journey in this auspicious time together, and we are shortly coming to a close in this chapter. You are all brave souls, and I'm deeply grateful for the collective will forces working collaboratively in everyone's unique way to deepen our understanding of the wisdom Rudolf Steiner was cultivating and gifting us, and to facilitate anthroposophy's impulse in the world in newly evolved and essential ways. Ginyu danginang aki, bilin Choi-Gekas, bijun dodem, takarantonin dojiba. This is my spirit name in Anishinaabe-Moan. I'm from Toronto, Kanin Kehab, meaning where there are trees standing in the water. I come from the unceded, stolen land I am a settler of, and every time I'm here, I offer sema, or tobacco, to this unceded, stolen ancestral land of the Massachusetts people, and acknowledge this shared colonial history of both these lands, and that all of us who are settlers continually benefit from. So my prayer and my hope is that we commit, whatever we commit to with anthroposophy, support the transmutation of all colonial and divisive poisons into some form of medicine for healing and freedom for all. So for our time, energy, and work together, I invite us to listen deeply with our hearts, cultivating our soul forces in heart thinking, empathic feeling, freedom and justice-informed willing. Practice Goethe's and Psychosophy's first adult learning process. I'm going into teacher mode. First adult learning process of objective observation or witness consciousness before jumping immediately to the second adult learning process of relating, which is so easy to jump to quickly. We can stay, or can we stay, in a state of objective listening and observing before we affectively relate or react to what we are experiencing through our 12 senses, not 5, but 12. With what you are experiencing in this time together and throughout this conference, just observe what you are responding to with sympathy or attraction or antipathy and dissonance. And then observe where you are experiencing these two polarities in your being, in your body, in your thinking, feeling, and willing soul forces. And when this happens, bring consciousness to your breath, soul breathing, and begin to deepen your breath every time you become aware of an experience of sympathy or antipathy, so that you may support yourself to return back to that first learning process of objective observing, to gain and have the opportunity to have access to what you can learn in whatever way, as much as you can in this moment before beginning trying to relate. So, because of the capacity limits, this paper will not go into details on the claims of Rudolf Steiner and anthroposophy being accused of racism, and will only refer to such claims by recommending other works one can utilize that contest and navigate these claims through looking at Rudolf Steiner's primary texts, their historical context, evolution, philosophical, and linguistic context, and the current contribution from the Goetheanum's leadership, who have been with us actually throughout this conference on specifically anthroposophy and racism. So there's a couple publications I refer you to. Let's skip ahead for time. I want to go into reading a quote. And my slides. I totally forgot about my slides. Let's do this. Here we go. Check in introductions, acknowledgements, invitation, heart thinking. Great. Went through that and that. Just I was looking at all your faces. I got captivated. So, so parameters. So the container I want to focus on is bringing this intersection of critical race theory, crit sci, and anthroposophy, but then focus some time on the fallen life processes, which is why I'm skipping chunks of this paper, which is just the beginning of this work, to be honest. A very important German term, verstehen, which is this idea of understanding. How do we understand? But the understanding in terms of empathy and relationality. And then this is what Steiner wants us to embody when we are in our learning process, when we are relating to different things in a developmental evolution. So if you cannot understand something, it is better to refrain from judging than to condemn. Rudolf Steiner. I'm going to jump into here. Critical race theory. Oh, we're in there. I'm going to read a quote that I forgot to put in my slides by Rudolf Steiner. Knowledge of human worth, feeling for human dignity, willing love for humanity. These are the most beautiful life fruits nurtured in humankind when one assimilates what is bestowed on them by spiritual science. GA 78. The research for this paper is derived from the work of my capstone from the Association of Anthroposophic Psychology's 2 programs. The goal of this work is to begin developing an anti-racist anthroposophy using the framework of the 7 life processes and the 7 fallen life processes that Rudolf Steiner provides in his lecture, The Riddle of Humanity, GA 170, a brand new publication just came out actually last month. So please pick one up and read. I have taken on the challenge that Dr. James Dyson, my dear, he would want me to say friend first and then teacher and mentor. He offered in his 2-part lecture on the fallen life processes during Seminar 5 of Michaelmas in 2023, that there is so much to understand and potentially implement through many fields from the 7 fallen life processes that Steiner provides in his lecture. So upon first reading of Steiner's lecture and participating in Dyson's lectures, I was inspired to use the 7 fallen life processes to deeper understand the development of racism from an anthroposophic perspective. So this research is only in a genesis stage for the study of racism from specifically an anthroposophic psychosophy to develop a decolonial and anti-racist praxis in hopes that it may continue over time with deeper work and collaboration, please. For now, I provide a starting place to catalyze both a study in this area and a praxis for beginning to develop an anti-racist anthroposophy. Angela Davies quotes, "In a racist society, it is not enough to be non-racist. We must be anti-racist. So as settlers, we don't decolonize. We practice anti-colonial practices to help our indigenous siblings decolonize." Language is so important and it can get really confusing, but then we have to go beyond language, right? Language is the container that we can actually act through our reality. We cannot understand racism without understanding colonialism. We cannot understand colonialism without understanding socio-cultural imperialism. And we cannot understand this kind of imperialism without understanding power. That's a word we hear a lot of in anthroposophy. And one of the impulses or polarities that is a reality that we work with. Anthroposophy's framework for these 7 processes has the ability to address the above oppressive systems through this empathic way of understanding of what power is, how it transforms through different intersecting relations, how it develops through each life and fallen life process, and how it is utilized for both freedom and oppression. If you cannot understand something, it is better to refrain from judging than to condemn. Steiner. The facility of racism is that it has a primary element of condemnation and judgment as someone is othered. So now some sociological frameworks that can, I believe, really collaborate. And just what Lucas was saying, anthroposophy, bringing this impulse of anthroposophy, using Rudolf Steiner's frameworks and teachings to take that next step of evolution in this next stage of 100 years. How is this going to look like? So critical race theory has 6 basic tenets. And the first one is very important, actually, which is racism is ordinary. It's actually normative. This comes up later in the paper. Racism serves a purpose. Race is a social construct. There is a differential racialization, a separation of different groups. It's an engagement with understanding intersectionality, and then also listening to the stories and the voices of people of color from all different parts of the globe and communities. Young defines 5 faces of oppression. And I'll just label them, and then you can read and the paper will eventually be put up as well. So cultural imperialism, exploitation, powerlessness, marginalization, and violence. And we're seeing this everywhere on our feeds. Addressing the racial injustices incites this gaslighting that when a liberal white person does not see race, the person of color is in fact defeated and always will be. This idea of color blindness. This permits white supremacy to avoid confrontation and continue in operation when the persons of color is continually exposed to news or videos or social media of racist events, and then later in a state of hypervigilance upon witnessing similar events or authorities of people around them, we see victims of racism suffering is maintained and brought into reality, addressing the racial injustice, which incites this gaslighting that the white person does not see race. The person of color is in fact defeated and always will be. This is interesting. The final defeat occurs once the person of color internalizes it. White supremacy wins again, again, and again. And this goes to what Lucas brought in about there is a hope, in that 6th epoch, that thing we want to have this oneness. The problem is we're not there yet. And there's so much work that needs to be done, which is why I believe these sociological frameworks are very crucial. And the voices of people of color are very important to actually center, while those with more power and privilege go to the periphery to hold that space in empathic resonance so that resilience and resurgence can begin to happen. Soul murder. I want to go into this, but look up soul murder because this is going to open up a can of worms. But again, it destroys identity, this idea of internalized oppression. And here's that other bolded quote there. It acts as a machine, as if you've taken off your hands off the wheel, the driving wheel. It acts as a machine of destructiveness that becomes self-perpetuating and self-sustaining. Which impulse, for those anthroposophists in the room, does this sound like that we are witnessing here? This is a big reality, and that impulse, or that RA impulse, is beginning to evolve into other incarnations as well. Of course, microaggressions is a reality. Okay, because we are here in the space of anthroposophy, I do want to read 3 very important quotes from the leadership that published from the Gota Anam as well. So the approach of anthroposophy is based on the possibility for self-knowledge, as well as on the human being's capacity for development, the self-reflective and also self-critical capacity to learn within a social movement, which never sees itself as complete. It's possibly one of the reasons why anthroposophical initiatives have proven to be overall a positive social factor in various cultures and life situations across the world without claim to perfection. They are imperfect and understand themselves as such. Rudolf Steiner was very much of the opinion that differences in the biological, ethnic, and cultural circumstances of people's lives and development exist. He did not believe in deliberately ignoring or leveling them in the sense of postulated unity of all humans, regardless of race, nation, or color, and so forth. However, he always represented the relativity of the otherness of others. Difference as a complementary contribution to the human whole and dignity of the unique self, the I. Racist thinking was just as alien to Steiner as was imperial, colonial, and hegemonic thinking when we come to language and these constructs for that time period. One of the tasks of the School of Spiritual Science is to present work for differentiated reception of the work and to take care of hermeneutic or tools of interpretive layers of approach to anthroposophical spiritual science. So thank you to the leadership of Anthroposophy for this publication. A really good source to look up a few things. Now, to spend my last time with the remaining time that I have, just going to give some visuals here of the 12 senses, the 7 planetary life processes, which translate into the fallen life process, which I'll show you in a moment, and then the 3 primary soul forces, and then the sun. Another visual that we are that macrocosm, microcosmic, incarnated body. Now here is where I want to focus on, is in that last column. You can take a photo of this. 7 fallen life processes, applying these 7, which have Lucifer and Ahriman work in trying to kind of get in the way of evolution. They play a role, right? So when Lucifer and Ahriman, these impulses, are in their proper place, they work for our development, but their nature is not to do that. Their nature is chaotic. Their nature is to slide in different ways. And when they are not acting out of their creational situation, they interrupt evolutionary development and literally interrupt how our life evolution and how we develop progresses. So if we look at the first one, and remember we were talking about the first learning process, observing. The first life process is breathing, this idea of taking the outer world into oneself. But when it becomes fallen, this idea of consumption is this idea of this internal movement into you with no limits. There's no boundaries. It just becomes pure consumption and going into a buildup in the body into the second, which causes this idea of combustion, or if you want to look at it as inflammation. Inflammation somatically in the body, inflammation in our mind, inflammation in our relationality with not just humans, but even the members of more than human communities of the kingdoms. Then, as everything's being consumed and it's inflaming the body, we go into this idea of depositing, this adding up, this as if it was like gaining weight. Or just if you're feeding yourself, you're growing. Or if you're collecting things like stones, or if you're collecting garbage and there's no recycling or waste management, it continues to build and build. And then things start to decay like a corpse. Then we come into the middle space, the lamboscape here, the middle space, which is where the Christ impulse exists, which is the site of transmutation and transformation. You can see there is no fallen life forces there because how Lucifer and Ahriman operate in nature, they don't know how to relate. They're polarities. They have particular roles, particular agendas. So this idea of integration, or as Steiner uses the word secretion, this idea to transmute something, they have no place there. It's actually impossible. And that's the place that we are all constantly trying to achieve ourselves to get to. That's the place that Lucas is talking about, empathic resonance. And then continuing this catabolic, as my time's running out, catabolic process of sclerosis or encapsulation. So when it comes to divisions of race and people groups, what happens? Encapsulate. We go inward, we contract, and we're like, oh, We're going to, this is our belief system. These are our teachings. These are your rules. Those are their rules. And it becomes this idea, this term that's used as tribalism, right? With this separation and these dichotomies. Then instead of growing and sustaining, we have this idea of decaying and destruction. And then as everything, the goal for everything in life, if there is life, is this idea of generation. And the fallen life force is, think of it as replication, like a Xerox machine, a copy. It's just a copy. There's no life in it, like cloning, like AI, artificial intelligence, or as the late, and my heart groans for Nicanor Perlis, you know, in his book. I have to call on him. He's really taught us a lot about what we can predict and what we are called to do. It's 20 minutes with artificial intelligence. And yes, I hear you. Artificial intelligence and artificial superintelligence. So let me close. I was going to do a little eurythmy exercise with you, but what I'm going to say is, for those who know eurythmy and the M, which is the harmonizing practice, please, at the end of this conference, go home, sit, and just harmonize, because through eurythmy, as if people know the practice of eurythmy, that helps to build the capacities for actual spiritual integration and development. And I will close with Steiner's quote: "Spiritual science, as we shall realize more and more clearly, will bring an end to the divisions of humankind." Thank you, everybody.
Sponsored by the Program for the Evolution of Spirituality.
Copyright 2023, the President and Fellows of Harvard College.